Chapter 26 Ollie's Dilemma. As Preachin' Bill used to say, every hound has its strong pints, but some has more of 'em. Young Stuart was not without grace pleasing to the girl whom he hoped to make his wife. He seemed to know instinctively all those little attentions in which women so delight, and he could talk, too, so intanely of the things he had seen. To the simple girl of the backwoods he succeeded in making the life of the city appear more wonderful indeed. Neither was Sammy insensible to the influence of his position and his prospect of wealth with the advantages of those things offered. Then, with all this, he loved her dearly, and when, if you please, was ever a woman wholly unmoved by the knowledge that she held first place in a man's heart? For 2 weeks they were together nearly every day, sometimes spending the afternoon at the girl's home on the side of Dewey, or roving over the nearby hills, sometimes going on long rides through the great woods to pass the day with friends, returning in the evening to find Jim smoking in the doorway of the darkened cabin. When Mr. Lane, at the end of the first week, asked his daughter, in his point-blank fashion, what she was going to do with young Stuart, the girl answered, "He must have his chance, Daddy. He must be given a fair chance. I don't know what it is, but there is, oh, I don't know. There's, I'm sure, I'm sure I loved him when he went away, that is, and I think I was sure." And Jim, looking into her eyes, agreed heartily, and then he took down his violin to make some joyful music far into the night. Ollie did not see young Matt after their meeting on the lookout. The big fellow, too, avoided the couple, and Sammy, for some reason, carefully planning their ride so that they wouldn't be likely to meet their neighbor on the ridge. Once, indeed, they called at the Matthews place and walked over in the evening, but that was when Sammy knew that young Matt was not at home. Day after day, as they talked together, the girl tried honestly to enter into the life of the man she had promised to marry. But always there was that feeling of something lacking. Just that something was, or she could not completely feel satisfied. Sammy could not understand. But the day was soon to come when she would know the true impulses of her heart. Since that first afternoon, Ollie had not tried to force his suit. While in 100 little ways he had not failed to make her feel his love, he had never openly admitted to the role of a lover. He was conscious that to put the girl constantly upon the defense would be a disastrous to his hopes, and in this he was wise. But the time had come when he must speak, for it was the last day of his visit. He felt he could not go back to the city without a definite understanding. Sammy, too, realizing this, but still she was not ready to give an answer to the question he would ask. They had been to the Forks, and were on their way home, and as they slowly rode under the trees, the man pleaded his cause, but the girl could only shake her head and answer quite truthfully, "Ollie, I don't know." "But tell me, Sammy, is there anyone in the way?" Again she shook her head. I I think not." "You think not? Don't you know?" The young man reined his horse closer to the brown pony. "Well, let me help you decide, dear. You are troubled because of the change you see in me, and because the life that I've tried to tell you about is so strange and so different from all here. You need not fear. With me, you'll be very soon at home there, as much as home as you are here. Come, dear, let me have an answer for you." The girl lifted her face to his. "Oh, if only you could." But even as she spoke, there came to her the memory of that ride home from the party at Ford's when her pony was crowded close to the big white-faced sorrel. It was Brownie this time who pulled sharply aside. The almost involuntary act brought a quick flush to the young man's cheek, and he promptly reined his own horse to the right, thus placing a full width of the road between them. And so they went down the hill into the valley, where Fall Creek tumbled and laughed on its rocky way. A thread of blue smoke curling lazily up from the old stack and the sound of a hammer told them that someone was at the mill. Sammy was caught by a sudden impulse. "Why, that must be young Matt," she explained. "Let us stop. I don't do believe you haven't seen him since you came home." "I don't want to see him nor anyone else right now," returned Ollie. "This is our last evening together, Sammy, and I want you all to myself. Let us go on up to old Rourke Trail, around the Cock's Bald, and home through the big low gap." He checked his horse as he spoke, for they were already passing the point where Rourke Trail leaves Fort Creek. But the girl was determined to follow her impulse. "You can stop for just a minute," she urged. "You really ought to see Matt, you know. We can ride this way if you like. It's early yet." The man held his place and replied shortly, "I tell you, I don't want to see anybody, and I'm very sure that young Matt don't want to see me. Not with you, anyway." Sammy flushed at this and answered with some warmish, "There's no reason in the world why you should refuse to meet an old friend. But maybe you do as you please, of course. Only I'm going down to the mill." So saying, she started down the valley, and as there was really nothing else for him to do, the man followed. As they approached the mill, Sammy called for young Matt, who immediately left his work and came to them. The big fellow wore no coat, and his great arms were bare, where his old shirt, patched and faded and patched again, was soiled by engine grease and perspiration. His trousers, too, held in place by suspenders repaired with a belt lacing and fastened with a nail, were covered with sawdust and dirt. His hands and arms, and even his face, was treated liberally with the same mixture that stained his clothes, and the shaggy red-brown hair, uncovered, was sadly tumbled. In his hand he held a wrench. The morrow was grinding day, and he was making some repairs about the engine. Altogether, as the backwoodsman came forward, he presented a marked contrast to the freshly clad, well-groomed gentleman from the city. And to the woman, the contrast was not without advantages to the man in the good clothes. The thought flashed through her mind that the man who would work for Ollie in the shops would look like this. It was the same old advantage, the advantage of the captain over the pirate, the advantage of rank regardless of worth. Sammy greeted Matt warmly. "I just told Ollie that it was too bad he hadn't seen you. You were away the night we called at your house, you know, and he's going home tomorrow." The giant looked from one to the other. Evidently Sammy had not heard of that meeting at the lookout, and Stewart's face grew red as he saw what was in the big fellow's mind. I'm mighty glad to see you again," he said lamely. "I told Sammy I'd seen you, but she must have forgotten." "No, I hadn't," replied the girl. "You said that you saw him in the field as you passed the first day you came, but you were in such a hurry you didn't stop." At this, Ollie forced a loud laugh and remarked that he was in something of a hurry that day. He hoped that in the girl's confusion the point might be overlooked. But the mountaineer was not to be sidetracked so easily. Ollie's poor attempt only showed more clearly that he had purposely refrained from telling Sammy of the night when young Matt had interfered to save his life. And to the simple, straightforward lad of the woods, such a course revealed a spirit most contemptible. Raising his soiled hands and looking straight at Ollie, he said deliberately, "I'm sorry, seeing as this is the first time we've met, that I can't shake hands with you. This here's clean dirt, though." Sammy was puzzled. Ollie's objection to their calling at the mill, his evident embarrassment at the meeting, and something in young Matt's voice that hinted at a double meaning in his simple words, all told her that there was something beneath the surface which she didn't understand. After his one remark to her escort, the woodsman turned to the girl, and in spite of Sammy's persistent attempts to bring the now sullen Ollie into the conversation, ignored the man completely. When they had talked for a few moments, young Matt said, "I reckon you'll have to excuse me a minute, Sammy. I left the engine in such a hurry when you called that I best look at it again. It won't take more'n a minute." As he disappeared into the mill shed, the young lady turned to her companion. "What's the matter with you two? Have you met and quarreled since you came home?" Fate was being very unkind to Ollie. he replied gruffly. You'll have to ask your friend. I told you how it would be. The greasy hobo don't like to see me with you and hasn't the manners enough to hide his feelings. Come on, let's get going. A look that was really worth seeing came into the girl's fine eyes, but she only said calmly, Matt will be back in a minute. All the more reason why I think we should go. I should think you've had enough. I know I have. The young woman was determined now to know what lay at the bottom of all this, and she said quietly, but with a great deal of decision, You may go home if you wish. I'm going to wait here until Matt comes back. Ollie was angry now in great earnest. He had not told Sammy of the incident at the lookout because he felt that the story would bring the backwoodsman into a light altogether too favorable. He thought to have the girl safely won before he left the hills, then it wouldn't matter. That young Matt would have really saved Ollie's life at the risk of his own, there was no doubt, and Stewart believed that his silence under such circumstances would look decidedly small and ungrateful to the girl. To have the story told at this critical moment was altogether worse than if he had generously told of the incident at once. And he saw, too, that Sammy guessed at something beneath the surface, and he felt uneasy in remaining until young Matt came back to renew the conversation, yet he feared to leave. At this stage of his dilemma, he was relieved from his plight in a very unexpected manner. End of chapter 26.